So I like to say the only question that's a dumb question is the one you don't ask. We've got a lot of material to get through, and there's some complexity to it, but I like it simple, like the old KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. So we're going to break the process into a couple different things, and we're going to talk about this. This presentation is more application based, and we're not going to get deep into the weeds and the legal aspects of it. We're going to talk about how to use it. I think that's what's most important for most people. I think when we're looking at tax law, so often it was sort of interesting. Yesterday morning, I was speaking with a prospective client who happens to be a police officer, and he said, I'm asking these questions. I've talked to a couple different companies, and I'm not getting clear answers on stuff. And I said, as a police officer, at least until the last couple of years of craziness, you live in a world of black and white. And when you get into tax law, so often is it not a question of black and white, it's gray. It's rarely a question of how you're going to get something done, it's how you're going to get it done. So like I said, I like to say the only dumb question is the one that you don't ask. If you've got questions in this space, please don't hesitate to reach out. People seem to have an aversion to calling and talking to people, and that is really by far the best way to do it. We can, in a 5-minute conversation, we can get really through the weeds where we can go back and forth via email or text for days and not get to the meat of the issues there. So when we're looking at this stuff, like I said, I'm going to apply the keep it simple, stupid. Today's presentation is titled Why Self-Directed Retirement Accounts Are Popular in Turbulent Times. And you'll hear it, but it's one simple answer to that. It's hard assets. The lack of liquidity is something that is looked at as a negative a lot of times, but the lack of liquidity is also the thing that offers stability and adversity. So that's the big secret. I've got slides covering a variety of things. We're going to go through the basics of the stuff. We're going to go through some examples at the end of the presentation. There is a glossary beyond that I'm not going to cover. I was talking to my marketing team today. Yesterday I spoke on 1031s. We advertised an hour-long presentation. If you've paid any attention, if you have been to previous presentations, I'm sort of the eternal optimist. I always think I'm going to get through more than I can. So there's more information in this packet than we're actually going to get through, but what I want to do is you're going to have access to it. So it's information I felt was important for you to have and to be able to reference going forward. So as I said, if you've signed up for this presentation, you're going to receive a copy of the PowerPoint for this, so you'll have it for future reference. Also, the video itself will be uploaded to our YouTube channels for your future use. So without further ado, off we go. And once again, my name is David Moore. I'm with IRA Advantage, and my background's real estate investment. And my brother and I started a company called Equity Advantage in 1991 to handle tax-deferred exchanges. During the ensuing years, we had a lot of our clients coming to us and asking about investing in real estate with their IRAs and 401k plans. And that's something that's, I believe it's one of those very well-kept secrets. It's something that's not new. From the inception of IRAs and 401k plans, you've always been able to invest in hard assets, tangible assets, real estate, gold, silver, palladium, whatever that might be. It's just something that's not out there and readily available to you. And for the most part, any restriction you have in your investment world today, and I have people all the time, if I was sitting in front of the room right now and we had the group of you out there and I asked for a show of hands for who in the room had a self-directed retirement account, a few of you probably hold up your hands. And if it's somebody that I know we've worked with, then I'm say, okay, yes, you truly do have a truly self-directed retirement account. And for the others out there, I'm going to ask, well, who's your trust company, or who's your administrator, or what's the plan documents say? But there's so many companies that advertise self-directed retirement accounts that are not self-directed retirement accounts. They're going to allow you to buy something off a menu option of Wall Street offerings, but they're not truly self-directed. And when we talk about or define a truly self-directed retirement account, it's going to be a retirement account that literally allows you to buy anything the law allows. It's not going to trap you in any single one type of investment. And so, I just want to say that, diversification, any financial advisor is going to tell you diversification is the secret to success. And when we're talking about self-directed accounts, it's not all or nothing. You're talking about further diversification. Now, the other thing is, one of the other big secrets of success is invest in what you know, right? Now, if you've got specific knowledge, this is February of 2022. Yesterday, Nancy Pelosi is discussing putting forth some new legislation that would restrict Congress's ability to trade in Wall Street investments during the time they're in office. Well, how did it ever get to the point where they could trade in this stuff? They've got insider knowledge. Anybody with insider knowledge on anything cannot use that. And here we are finally looking at some legislation that's going to slow that down for them. I mean, it's ludicrous, but in the self-directed world, if you're a mortgage broker and you want to take your retirement account and go make loans, you can do that. If you're a real estate broker and you want to go out and buy real estate with that, great, you can do that. If you have a situation where maybe you lost your job during this COVID period, during slowdown, something else happened, well, you could access your funds during this period of time, your retirement account, and we can literally create a new business that you work for, and that could be in something you specifically know. Hopefully, all of these things are things that minimize risk and increase your ability to make money and guarantee a better, more secure future for you. Now, the thing that's really interesting to me, I've been handling exchanges for in excess of 30 years at this point in time, and we've had this company for over a dozen years, the IRA business, and during those years, rarely do I have our 1031 clients come into the office. And on the other side, our retirement clients come in all the time. And a lot of the retirement clients were people that we'd handled exchanges for during those years. And I hadn't seen them during the 1031 process, but all of a sudden they show up during the retirement side. And I said, well, why are you here now? And they said, well, this is my retirement. And I fail to see the difference. I mean, if you're taking real estate and pulling money out of your pocket, buying it, typically that's something you're building your estate, you're building wealth for a future. And at some point you're going to retire and you've got all that stuff there. And really, I look at any investment in real estate. I mean, obviously it could be a business if you're flipping it, but flipping property is something that doesn't fit 1031, and it's a business that's not an investment. But if you're investing in real estate, it's a situation where, typically you're looking at building for the future, and from my simple perspective, it looks like a retirement situation too. It's really no different than having an IRA 401k. Now, look at what you have, look at where you are today, and where do you want to be in 2, 5, or 10 years, and think about what is possible. What do you really want to do with the assets you've got? Now, the first thing I want to say before we crack this presentation today, and this is probably the biggest misunderstanding people have in this space, is they think they're pulling money out of their retirement account to go do these things. You're not pulling money out of your retirement account to self-directed. And as I said, it's not all or nothing. If we're talking IRAs, I'm going to tell you, keep your IRA investments, your Wall Street stuff with your current financial advisor, and move the money you want to use in a self-directed capacity in these new accounts. If we're talking 401k plans, maybe we don't do that. Maybe we move all the money into the new plan, and then you open trading accounts. We'll talk about why that difference might exist in a while. But the idea is it's just giving you further diversification. If you've got a situation right now where you want to go out and buy something that Wall Street doesn't sell, and you're being told you can't buy it, and it's in compliance with what is possible to acquire via an IRA or a 401k, that restriction is not based in law. That restriction is based upon the custodian or the trustee or the administrator. If we're talking about 401k plans, it might be per the plan document. And you'd be shocked at how many times we might look at a plan document, for example, somebody calls up and says, hey, I'd like to take my 401k plan and go buy X, Y, or Z investments. and that person's been told they can't do it. Well, I've got a client that's an ex-IRS auditor. He's a CPA and a real estate broker, and he came to us, this is a couple of years ago now. He wanted to buy into an institutional TIC using his retirement account, and it was a time-sensitive transaction. And so first thing I did is I said, okay, hey, you know, throw your plan document at me. Let me see what it says. So I take a look at the plan document. And you know, if a plan document prohibits such an investment, we're going to say, well, can we have the plan document amended to allow it? Or if we can't amend it, we might have to replace it. Obviously, amendments or replacements are going to be dictated by number one, the business, and number two, you know, what that administrator, trustee, what those people are wanting to do with these things. But in this particular gentleman's case, I said, look, you know, your plan document allows the investment, so tell your trustee you want to do this, and the trustee said, no, you can't do it. And I said, tell them, look, it's this section, this paragraph, this sentence specifically states you can do this. They still argued you couldn't do it. So I said, look, get me on a call with him. We talked about it. I cited the paragraph, cited the sentence, and finally we got him to think about it. And he said, okay. They went back to their legal counsel, and finally got to a point where they said, yes, we'll make the investment for you, but it's going to require a 60-day review and approval period to get it done. That was not going to happen. So ultimately, we just bounced that plan out of there, replaced all of it, everything for them, and made the investment for them. But that was just a situation where the people running the stuff didn't truly understand what that plan and plan document truly allowed to be done. So I want to stress, when we're making these investments, when we're looking at things and where people are with these plans or custodians, we're really just looking, we're not pulling money out. Okay, you're not taking a distribution. Last night, I had a conversation with one of the people in my office, and we were talking about a situation, and the taxpayer was concerned. They'd been told by their tax or legal counsel, hey, you can't do this because you're going to have a huge tax hit. And we said, no, you're not going to have any tax hit. You're not pulling anything out. You're not taking a distribution. We're just moving money from one thing that won't allow you to make this investment to something that will allow that investment to be made. So that's the biggest thing, the biggest piece of, my father used to say, anytime you know anything about something you're reading about, you know how wrong it is. And this is something that we have to overcome every single day in this business, whether it's a 1031 business or the IRA business. There's so much misinformation out there. So if you've got questions on something, give a call, talk to us, ask the questions, and hopefully we'll be able to take care of you. Sometimes we can't, but the idea is we want to look at where you are today, and as I said before, where you want to be in 2, 5, or 10 years, and we're going to help you get there. So here we go. I say that, then the frame doesn't move. All right, tangible assets, okay? Why do people like tangible assets, and what happens in turbulent times? The stock market can fluctuate dramatically every single day. And I have a buddy, a good friend, and we were at a business meeting one morning. This is, I don't know, this is probably 10 years ago, but I still remember it vividly today. And he stood up, he started talking about, Wall Street investments, stocks over time, and he cited Coca-Cola, and he cited these dramatic returns. If you bought Coca-Cola in the 40s, what it would be worth today. And, it was a great point because, time heals a lot. And if you look at things, if you can get through the bad times with it, you're going to be fine. The issue with hard assets is they can't disappear. They don't go away. An unencumbered piece of property, for example, the only way it's ever going to go away for you is if you just stop paying property taxes on it, and it's still going to take a while before the government takes that thing from you. But you might fluctuate up and down in value, but it can't evaporate. My comment about the Coca-Cola stock is how many companies that were in existence in 1940 are still in existence today. So the idea with hard assets, whether it's gold, silver, precious metals, real estate, these things are hard assets, tangible assets. They're great inflationary hedges, and over time, they're not going to disappear. Now, we're all hearing a lot of ads for gold and silver these days. And you know, if you think about what are they selling? Tangible asset inflationary hedge. Now, if you buy gold, silver, any precious metal, you're betting that the thing's going to go up in value. Unlike precious metals, real estate doesn't have to. If it's a leveraged investment, somebody's going to be paying it off for you over time. You know, it is going to go up, but you've also got the cash flow on the asset over time. If it's an income property, you've got these things, these payments, whether it's rent or whatever else might be going on, those big long leases, those things are all adding. It's like a dividend paying stock. All that money is going into that account and it's building your retirement. Whether the asset goes up or down is really irrelevant. I was taught never to bank on appreciation, but the great thing about it is it will go up. Now, I lost a very near and dear friend, you know, a short time ago, and he was nicknamed the Exchange, the 1031 Guru, and he wrote, or actually he didn't write, but we did a video, and if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to watch it. It's titled in sort of a tongue-in-cheek title, Ask the Geezers, but if you go into, type in Equity Advantage on YouTube, Equity Advantage Ask the Geezers on YouTube, you're gonna have that thing come up. If you want to hear him say what I've quoted at the bottom, just go all the way back, maybe 5 minutes from the end of it. But I would encourage you to listen to that video because it really covers what's happening today with real estate. I think it's a great video, and it's very timely today. We did it roughly a year ago, but you know, at the end of that thing, he makes a comment. He says, real estate is not a get-rich scheme. It is a get-rich slowly but surely scheme. There is one golden rule: never sell during a recession. And that was from Bob Nelson, Pac West Commercial, the 1031 Guru out of Eugene. And I just think that is such a wonderful statement. I think nothing could be truer. And you've got something that's going to be there. It's not going to go away, and it's really going to work out for you over time. So tangible assets, inflationary hedges, and by the way, what are these things considered in the investment world? Alternative investments. How can that be? How can the oldest, most time-tested investments in the history of mankind be considered alternative investments instead of, I call them, real investments? Invest in real investments for a secure future. So I made a quick comment earlier. If we're looking at, you've got an IRA that doesn't allow you to go do what you want, it's per the custodian. And really all we're going to do is move money, and it's not all or nothing. You're going to move what you want to use in self-directed from the custodian. It won't allow you to do what you want to one that does. All right. If we're talking about 401k plans, we're just moving money, or we're going to not move money, but we're going to look at that plan, and we're going to go from a plan that won't allow you to make an investment that you want to one that does. And it's really pretty much wide open, okay? The way the law works in these things, if it's not specifically prohibited, it's therefore allowed. But self-directed is not a legally defined term. It's just a term that describes an account that allows you to do what you want to do. And it's one of those terms that's really been sort of abused or misused through the years, because lots of people say, well, yeah, I got a self-directed IRA. Yeah, okay, yeah, who's the custodian? Oh, it gives you the opportunity to buy this fund, this fund, this fund, this fund, or this fund. Well, and you can maybe do it electronically. You don't have to go through somebody to do it. Well, that's really not a self-directed account. I mean, give me a break. So that's going to allow you to go through that menu. But we're talking about an account that will let you buy all of that stuff and everything else the law allows. It's literally wide open for you. Why a self-directed retirement account? Okay, why now? Well, tired of the stock market's roller coaster, right? Maybe you're tired of watching stocks go up or down every day for whatever reason, whatever's going on. Greater financial control. You know, that money is literally where you put it. If we put a checkbook IRA together for you, you're literally going to have a bank account in a checkbook IRA requires a structure that includes a limited liability company. The member of the limited liability company is a trust company for benefit of your IRA. You're the manager of that limited liability company. So you're going to have a bank account at the bank of your choice in the limited liability company's name and tax ID number. you as manager of the LLC, it's a manager managed LLC. You as the manager of the LLC have the power of the pen. So you're going to establish that bank account. The investment that is made by the trust company is the LLC, which funds the bank account, and then you have the power of the pen. You go make investments on behalf of the LLC. So, like I said, that money isn't somewhere across the country with somebody you don't know. It's literally where you put it, and you can make the investments at your will. So that's that greater financial control. You know where that money is. Invest in what you know. Like I said earlier, I mean, if you got specific knowledge of something on Wall Street, you can't legally use it. In our space, you can. Use that knowledge, minimize the risk. Don't take chances you don't have to take. So, you know, why not use what you've spent your time doing and further increase your secure future? Increase investment flexibility. So with IRAs, like I said, we're going to encourage you to keep all your IRA stuff or your Wall Street stuff where it is. I want you to keep it with your financial advisor. Let them do their job. They're very important in your life, and I want them to continue to do that. You're only going to move what you want to use in this capacity. Now, if we're looking at 401k plans, we go out and put, if let's say you're a real estate broker and you want a retirement account, you're self-employed with no employees, I'm going to do solo 401k for you. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But with the 401k plans, I don't have to really segregate where things are. What we're going to do is we're going to move all the money into your 401k plan. Then you're going to open a Wall Street account with your financial advisor. So if you've got an account personally in an IRA with that person or that company, you're going to move that money into the 401k plan, and then you just reestablish that relationship with your financial advisor in the 401k situation, and then everything else you're free to go use as you choose on that self-directed stuff. There's no reason to segregate, and we'll talk about why that difference exists in those two things in a few minutes. All right. Real investments, not alternative investments, talked about that already. Community-based investing, you see an opportunity in your community. One of the examples, one of the slides later in this presentation talks about, you know, something that's literally adjacent to a person's, you know, home. Well, maybe you want to have a situation where you know that neighborhood, you know what's going on, you want to control what's going on, and you've got the ability to do that. So community-based investing is definitely there. Make a difference. You know, go where you can make a difference. Take advantage of today's opportunities, tangible assets, great inflation hedges, as we've talked about. Security, as I said, you're literally putting the money where you want to put it. You know where it is. You're working with people that you know. The course to your future. So maybe you got laid off. Maybe during all this hardship, you lost your job. Now you're looking for that olive branch to the future. Well, this is it. You've got access. If you had a job with some big corporation, a 401k plan. We're going to talk about 401k plans, enrolling and creating these accounts in a bit. But the bottom line is, if you want to go self-direct money and you're happily employed with a company with a current company 401k plan, if you're under 59.5, we can't get access to that money. So if you lost your job, today's the reason. So in turbulent times, people change jobs, and that's going to allow you to get access to the money, and we can then take that money and do what you want to do. Now, be careful with what you're doing. I tell a story. We had somebody that took a new job. They quit their one job and engaged us to put their retirement account, self-directed account together. But before it was able to get all completed, they went and took a new job, and they didn't pay attention to the fact that the new job had the same parent company, the old job. Therefore, the new plan was the same. So we actually lost the ability to self-direct this account. That was an unfortunate thing. So we really need to look at where things are and make sure we're timing things. But I've literally had people quit their jobs or step away, owners of companies step away from their positions with their own companies to get access to money when they're not old enough to take an in-service distribution. So these things are all things that come up, and anyway, so just be aware that it's there and it's options, and you have to be aware of the time when you can or can't do these things. Why a self-directed retirement account now? So as I said, access to funds. If we're talking about creating a 401 or creating a self-directed retirement account, we have to know what kind of money, what's the source of those funds, and do you have access to those funds? And then those are two different things. So we've got to make sure that in a 401k plan, if it's a current plan and you're happily employed, you're under 59.5, we've got a problem. If you quit your job, you've lost your job, you're going to have access to that money, and then we can self-direct it. Diversification is another reason to do this. You've got everything in stocks and bonds, and you want to go out and buy hard assets, whether it's oil and gas, or you want to buy real estate, or you want to go buy gold, silver, whatever it be, heavy metals. Those things are all going to be possible through a truly self-directed retirement account. Inflation. Think about cars right now. Think about, I mentioned yesterday, if anybody out there likes watches, try to go buy a nice watch in today's world. If you want to go buy a Rolex, you can't do it. I mean, you're going to be in line for 2 years right now to do these things. Cars, rental cars. I saw something this morning, not rental cars, but secondhand cars, used cars. They've gone up somewhere between 20 and 40% in the last, little over a year. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, you look at the cost of your food, you think of the groceries when you walk out of these things. So hard assets are great hedges against inflation. The deal is with a retirement account, you're talking about tax deferral. You're talking pre-tax money growing tax deferred. Roth money is tax money that's going to grow tax free. Now, understand what's happening there, and you've always got a time when you want to pay the taxes, but and with respect to inflation, with respect to taking distributions, with respect to what you're trying to accomplish in different things, you might be better off. If you're young and you have a long investment future ahead of you, or you see investments that are going to give you a tremendous opportunity, maybe a Roth conversion is something you want to do, and that'd take care of it. Well, at my age, I would be much less likely to do a Roth conversion in something than to just take a distribution of my money. But I'm sort of in a unique situation because I look at everything and I say, okay, gee, what else am I going to do with this money? And if I look at owning something inside or outside a retirement account, what is it? What are the ups and downs of doing those things? But honestly, I'm a real estate guy. So for me, if I'm stuck, if I've got a situation where, gee, I want to buy money in or outside something, if it's real estate, I'd rather own it outside a plan than inside a plan. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a little while. But obviously hard assets, inflationary hedges, we're all hearing the ads on the radio, seeing the ads on TV for heavy metals, but we're not seeing that stuff for real estate. I am for the first time hearing and seeing ads on TV on institutional real estate. So it's sort of interesting to watch that stuff. And when I'm talking about institutional real estate, I'm not talking about a REIT, which is a share. We're talking about actually owning a piece of a hard asset directly. That's what I'm talking about. So life, why that life comment down there is, you're here today, there's lots of people retiring today. What is life got for you? What does life have in store for you moving forward? What do you want to do with it? So understand this money is yours, okay? And I really think this is lost a lot of times. Your retirement account is your money. It's nobody else's. And a lot of times people treat it like it's somebody else's. And with that said, I like to say anytime I'm describing or talking to somebody that's a new client in this space, I'm going to say, look, don't think of this money as yours, which is counter to what I just said. It's for your benefit ultimately, but you're not going to benefit directly until you take things as a distribution. I like to say, don't think of it as yours, think of it as Sally down the street. You're not going to take Sally's money. You're not going to sign a loan for Sally. You're not going to buy Sally's insurance on something. So anytime you've got something owned by a retirement account, it is your retirement accounts. It is not you. And the best piece of advice I can give you is to treat it as such. Respect it. It's not yours. And I'll take that right back down to, if we're looking at a checkbook IRA, for example, we're moving money from one custodian to another. We're creating an IRA specific limited liability company. And then what's happening in that limited liability company, when we ask for a name, we want to know where our clients want the state of registration for the LLC, which is typically going to be either the state of investment or the state of residency. And that's sort of dictated by, whether the state's got foreign or domestic, some benefits to a domestic owner versus foreign owner. Or if you're, for example, living in California, you probably don't want to pay your $800 a year for a limited liability company, where in Washington State you can pay $60 a year. So, those things all sort of come into play. But we're going to look at a variety of things. But when I ask you for a name for the LLC, inevitably people want to use their name. So when we're naming LLCs for checkbook IRAs, I want you to use a name that makes it painfully clear this is not you. Have fun with the name, but don't use your name, because I wanted to say, hey, this is my retirement account. This is not me. I'm not going to sign on a loan for this thing. It's not going to be on my insurance policy. It's got to be a new policy. If it's a loan in place, it's got to be non-recourse debt. It's going to be to that thing. You're not the borrower. Your retirement account is. So, best piece of advice, this is not you. It's your retirement account. The only time it becomes you is when it's been taken as a distribution. What are common objections? Now, this is not new. None of this stuff is new, all right? This is something that's been around since retirement accounts started in the mid-70s. Now, I go to presentations, other presentations people give. I'll never forget, this is probably 20 years ago. In our region, there used to be an investment group. It was a great group called the MART, meaningful arrangement of real property transactions. Bunch of commercial brokers, and that used to get together every month, and they do a pitch session. Properties have once go through stuff, trying to figure out how to make deals work for their investors, and then they'd have CE come into continuing education. They have speakers come in, and this is when Tom Anderson actually, the founder of Pensco Trust, which is no longer Pensco, but he was one of the founding fathers of this sort of industry, and great guy. And so Pensco was speaking, and then they had a CPA speak, good friend Eric Wickstrom, and then some other people spoke, but the primary speaker was a guy actually trying to sell investments, not really, it was talking about how to do these things, but really the primary speaker was just trying to sell his investments and his book. But so you sit in there and walk in, spent a day there, and I walked out, and it's really, gee, I really didn't learn much on how to do this stuff, how to apply the self-directed investment world, how to get my money from here to here, make the investments I want to make. And it's really not that complex, but you've got to understand, what you're up against, and that this is something that there's just not a lot of information out there on. So the common objections, if you talk to your financial advisor, one of these things actually came up yesterday, and I just laugh when I get these objections. So first objection that comes up all the time: why would you take your retirement account to go buy real estate, let's say? Because you're going to lose the long-term capital gains tax rate, on that asset. So, for example, Equity Advantage channels 1031 exchanges. We've been doing that for, like I said, over 30 years. Well, 1031 is all about tax deferral, right? And ultimately, if you swap till you drop, you can actually get rid of the tax entirely. And we were worried about swapping the stepped-up basis, elimination of stepped-up basis with Biden's Build Back Better. It almost went away, but it didn't. It was preserved. But that's an incredible tool. You're kicking that tax obligation down the road into perpetuity, right? So, and if you sell and you realize the gain, if it's something held for a year or longer, you're looking at long-term capital gains tax rates instead of normal income tax rates. Now, if we look at this first objection, well, taking your IRA or 401k and going to buy real estate, yes, you will lose long-term capital gains tax rates. So it's not going to be as pretty as though you took money out of your pocket to go buy it, right? But let me ask you this: is there a single investment you can make with an IRA or 401k that gives you those rates? And the answer is no. So that statement is totally irrelevant. Doesn't mean anything. Anything in your retirement account is going to be taxed at the same tax rates. Just keep that in mind. So whether it's real estate, whether it's gold, whether it's securities, it doesn't matter, okay? Once again, I'm going to say, traditional IRAs, you're going to pay tax on the distribution. 401k plans, you're paying tax on the distribution. Now, it's possible in a real estate investment with an IRA, or even with a 401k plan, you could have some tax exposure. And that's due, it's attributable to bullet number 2, cannot be leveraged. Okay, why would you take your IRA 401k plan, go buy real estate when you can't leverage it? Totally wrong. You can leverage it. You've just got to have non-recourse debt. Now, with an IRA, you're going to have tax exposure on the income or gain that's attributable to other people's money. So that's not a reason to do or not to do something. It's just another consideration to factor into your ultimate return on investment. So once again, I want to stress, you can leverage an IRA 401k owned asset. It's just got to be non-recourse debt. What that means is, in a default, the only thing the bank can take is that property. That loan is not going to be subject to your income, your credit, or anything else you've got. It's going to be dependent on that asset. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. What about RMDs? So remember at the beginning we talked about liquidity or lack of liquidity, the lack of liquidity given stability over time, where the liquidity gives you that roller coaster ride, right? So if we look at, RMDs and we look at liquidity, people say, well, gee, you buy real estate, let's say, and you have something come up and you spent all your money on the real estate and you turn 72, let's say, and now you have to take a RMD, which is a required minimum distribution. The issue is going to be, how do you do it? Well, Wall Street world said, well, don't do it because you don't have any money there. You're going to get hit with this big penalty. Well, the answer is, the solution is very simple. You just take an in-kind distribution. This is something that is not thought of much, and it's always been possible. It's not a new concept, and not only is it not a problem, it's, I believe, a tremendous opportunity. So if we're looking at in-kind distributions, let's say it's a piece of property. And a lot of times, quite honestly, people want to take that property. Maybe they buy a place at the beach with their retirement account. Ultimately, they want to own it. They want to live in it personally. They can do that. They just can't live in it or use it in any way until it's been taken as a distribution. But you might think, well, gee, okay, so I'm going to take and deed that entire property out at once. Now, what happens is you take that property out in-kind distribution. You're going to have to say, what's the value of the asset? And you're going to have to justify that, work with your tax people, and then you're going to have a tax consequence based upon the value of that property. All right. So the upside is you're taking it out. You might have a valuation opportunity. The downside is you're triggering tax exposure without receiving the funds to pay the tax obligation. So where's the best place to find that money? Cash out refinance. As soon as it hits your pocket, as soon as it's deeded from the retirement account to you, do a cash out refinance. Now you've got the money to pay the tax obligation. Now the property's yours and you're done. Now let me take it a step further. If you take an in-kind distribution and you're talking about RMDs, we're not going to take the whole thing. You're going to take a piece of that asset. Now you can take a piece of that asset in two ways. You can take a tenancy in common interest in the piece of property, or you can take, and if the property is owned by a limited liability company, which is really the way I like to see it done, we're just going to do an assignment of membership interest for that distribution. Now, if that assignment of membership interest, if that specific membership interest is a minority interest in the asset, in that LLC, we're going to take it and kick it up a notch. You can discount that value of that in-kind distribution by up to 40%. This strategy is used in gifting all the time. All right, we use it in 1031s all the time. People, come to us and say, look, I want to go buy, I've got 3 kids, I want to go out and exchange out this one property, go buy 3 properties. Ultimately, one's going to be for Susie, one's for Steve, one's for Harry, right? So we might buy those properties, one in each different LLC, and then we just do assignments of membership interest over a series of years until they're all transferred to the kids. So gifting uses that process, that strategy all the time. It's not used in the retirement world that often, but it should be with those in-kind distributions. So once again, the benefits of in-kind distributions is, 1, you can do them. 2, valuations. 3, it's possible to discount. And these things, I haven't said it yet, usually I really harp on everybody. It is critical that you have great tax people in your life. All right, in my opinion, great tax people are probably one of the most important people in your life when you're talking about keeping your money yours. You work hard for your money, we work hard to keep it yours. Your tax people, I hear this comment all the time, well, they're expensive. Good tax people are expensive. I'm going to tell you, it's way more expensive not to have. All right, so somebody that knows what they're doing, and what I mean by that is you're paying somebody for opinion, not going to pay them to learn on your behalf. So good people that understand this stuff and that are going to be able to answer the questions. If you're working with us on something, we're going to probably, if we've got concern with something, we're going to take and give you information. We're going to shove you information that's pertinent, that's direct to the point on that issue. You shove it in front of your tax people, discuss it with them, then you go forward on what's going to happen. But good tax people are critical, and I just can't stress that enough. So RMDs, like I said, the lack of liquidity is not a problem. If you don't have the cash in there, take an RMD, just take an in-kind distribution as the RMD. You lose interest, deductions, depreciation. Yeah, right. If you pull money out of your pocket, go buy a piece of property. As I said before, you've got a situation where I was taught never to bank on appreciation, as I said, but you're going to have somebody paying down the property. You're going to have the cash flow on the property. You're going to have, if it's got a loan, you've got interest, deductions, depreciation, so on and so forth. Now, if it's an IRA-owned asset, and once again, IRAs, 401ks, don't think of it as you. It's the retirement accounts. If there's tax exposure, it's not your tax exposure, it's the retirement accounts tax exposure. So with a leveraged investment with an IRA, you have tax exposure on the income or gain attributable to leverage. That means other people's money. So whether it's a seller carryback or bank provided loan, you may have some tax exposure. Now that does not mean you should or should not make an investment. It's just one more factor to consider in the ROI. And it might be possible that you do take interest, deductions, depreciation if it's a leveraged investment with an IRA. That's where you work with those good tax people once again. But these are just 4 common objections I hear every day from people that have talked to somebody, maybe their tax or legal people about this process or their financial advisor. And these questions all come up, or statements all come up, just because people are not familiar with what this thing actually allows you to do, how it works, and the fact that there are other options out there and you're not pulling money out of the retirement account. I want to stress it again. We're not pulling money out. You're not taking a distribution. The money's just shifting from one custodian to another or one plan to another. And that's it. We're just using your retirement account for yet more diversification of investment. And that's that success deal. And your financial advisors are going to tell you to diversify. So I have to apologize. I see some questions coming up on the right side, and I have tried to get to them, and my computer is not letting me get to them. So Tanya, I am going to address your questions after we wrap up. I apologize for that. Once again, if you've got questions, please get them there, and I'm going to have to address the questions after we finish up today. But I'll try to get you answers by the end of the day. All right. So, as I said at the beginning, KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. If I'm talking about a 1031 exchange, something that's over 100 years old now, we've got lots of case law out there, not lots, but lots compared to retirement accounts. We've got 4 basic issues. One, it's got to be an exchange. Items relinquished and received have to be of like kind. We've got to satisfy what we call a napkin test, cross up in value and equity. And finally, we've got to have continuity vesting. If I'm talking about retirement accounts, it's really easy, okay? This is not complicated. 2 issues. What do you want to buy? And who are you transacting between or for the benefit of? That's it, okay? What do you want to invest in? And who are you transacting between or for the benefit of? The rules have never changed. They've always been the same. It's just a well-kept secret, all right? As far as possible investments, if it's not specifically prohibited, it's therefore allowed. So you can literally buy anything with an IRA, anything other than collectibles, life insurance contracts, or stock in a sub-S corporation. 401k plans are even more liberal. The only thing you can't buy with a 401k plan is collectibles. All right. So if you want to go buy precious metals, for example, make sure you're working with a dealer that specializes in IRA 401k compliant investments. Collectible metals are not going to qualify. It would be a prohibited transaction to buy those things. And if we're talking about prohibited transactions with an IRA, you don't want to commit one, because you commit a prohibited transaction, all funds in the account are treated as distributed as of the first day in the year in which the indiscretion occurs. So you don't want to commit a prohibited transaction. 401k plans is different. 401k plans, it's only the money involved with the indiscretion is treated as a distribution. So what I mean by that is, let's say you've got a checkbook IRA and you've got a debit card for that IRA's bank account. And you go through, I'm sorry, my wife gets on me all the time. I'm a junk food junkie. Might not look like it, but I am. So I stumble my way through McDonald's line and I pull out my debit card for my checkbook IRA instead of my debit card for my bank account. So I go and buy my Happy Meal for 10 bucks these days. Inflation, oh, you love it. Used to be 5 bucks, now it's 10. Anyway, so you spend for 10 bucks, you pull out the debit card for the checkbook IRA, you just blew up and distributed all funds in that account as of the first day in the year in which the account indiscretion occurred. You don't want to do that. Now, if I have a 401k plan, I do the same thing. I just took a $10 distribution. So that's why it's so critical that you're really careful with these things. And anytime if we've got a checkbook IRA, anytime you pull that checkbook out, before you put pen to paper, you think, okay, what am I writing this check to, and who's it to, and what's it for? You got to be careful with that. So what are you buying, and who are you transacting between, or for the benefit of? Those are the two issues. Possible investments, literally, like I said, anything other than collectibles, life insurance contracts, stock in a sub-S corp. It's just got to be merely for investment purposes. Second part, since rarely is the investment a problem, the issue is going to be the transaction between or for the benefit of disqualified parties. Your question is, well, who's a disqualified party to your plan? Well, you would be, if you're married, your spouse would be, parents, grandparents, kids, grandkids, their spouses, or any legal entity owned and controlling interest by one of those. Now, who did I omit from that list? I didn't say anything about aunts, uncles, nor did I say anything about cousins, nor did I say anything about siblings, all right? So believe it or not, if you've got a IRA and you want to go buy something for your brother or sister live in, that's fine. You want to loan them money, that's fine. Mom and dad, absolutely no. Kids, absolutely no. So if you think, hey, Junior's going to go to college, and hopefully Junior gets out of college in 4 years, and you want to buy a property for Junior to live in during that time, you cannot do that with an IRA. That would constitute a prohibited transaction, because it would be a transaction between disqualified parties. All right. So could you make an investment in a student housing project? Certainly. Could your kid be in it? Absolutely not. So if we're looking at these things, as I said, rarely is the investment a problem. What triggers issues is that transaction between or for the benefit of a disqualified party. So if we're talking about a loan, let's say, and you want to go out and allow recourse to you to make a loan happen, you can't do that if it's your IRA or 401k. That would constitute a prohibited transaction. Here's one that comes up all the time. We do a lot of advertising on the radio, and people will call up. And it historically, I said it takes maybe 2 to 4 weeks to put one of these accounts together. Today, I'm going to tell you probably it's 4 to 6 or 4 to 8 weeks. It just takes so long to move money. And so the deal is that if you are doing anything in life, you plan it, right? You plan ahead. And in this space, it's more critical than ever. You cannot, I want to stress this, you cannot tie up a property personally and then assign that purchase sale agreement over to your retirement account. And you're saying, well, gee, the purchase sale agreements include assignment provisions. That should be fine. Yes, they do. And typically that would be fine. But the fact that you take the property off the market and then you assign that PSA over to your retirement account, there's a benefit to a disqualified party. Therefore, it's a prohibited transaction. So we've got to be careful with that situation. We don't want to have that happen. So my advice would be, if you've got to write an offer on something and you're not ready to go with it, then you want to make sure, have your brother or sister do it, and don't do it personally, because that's going to bring up the opportunity of a problem there. One other comment on that slide. So it's a prohibited transaction to transact between or for the benefit of a disqualified party, but it is not a prohibited transaction to transact along with. So if you want to be a co-owner of a property or some other asset along with your retirement account, that's fine, okay? But you can't sell to, buy from, loan to, or borrow from. So once again, I want to stress, if you want to be a co-owner of something along with the retirement account, that would be okay. But you cannot, buy from, sell to, loan to, borrow from, or have any other of your disqualified parties benefit from what's going on with your retirement account. So we're talking about real estate investments here. What kind of real estate is going to qualify for an IRA or 401k to buy? And that's going to be rental house, apartment buildings, office buildings, retail centers, land, any property acquired with the intent to hold for investment, including a future retirement house. So as I said, in that situation, you're not going to use the property. You cannot use the property ever, period, until it's been taken out as a distribution. And actually, I want to hit on something else real quick too. You can do, if you take your retirement account, go make one of these investments, buy one of these properties, you can do the administrative functions of management, but you cannot work on the property. You can't get dirty on it. You cannot go out. So I'll have people call up, say, hey, I want to go flip property with my IRA 401k. Well, you can't work on the property, period. So if you want to flip properties with your IRA, you want to work on the stuff, we're going to have to do what's called a rollover business startup. So we're literally creating a real estate investment company in that situation, where we're going to move the money from IRAs or 401ks into a new 401k plan, create a C corp, plan buys a corp, corp buys the property, and there you go. You're employed by a corporation that has as a shareholder your retirement account. You're taking compensation. You're working on the stuff. So that's how you get that done if you're wanting to do that stuff. But if you want to go flip property, the second component of flipping property is we're talking about investment here, not business. So if we're going and buying, for example, you go buy an apartment building and the apartment building has, for example, a laundromat in it, that laundromat's a component of the investment. It's helping with the ultimate yield on that investment. That's fine. Now you go out and say, gee, that laundromat for the apartment building's great, so I want to go out and buy a laundromat. And so you go do that. Now you've got a business. So, which is, it's okay, that's fine, but you just, once again, you're going to work with your tax people and you're going to have some tax exposure on what's going on. Even with a Roth IRA, you would have tax exposure on leveraged investments. And if you're running a business, some type of business enterprise with the Roth IRA, even though you say, hey, gee, I paid the tax, it's supposed to all be tax-free, you're not investing, you're conducting business, and that's where the tax liability is going to come from. All right, so it's UBTI or UBIT, unrelated business taxable income. Things you can't buy, or property you cannot buy with an IRA. Can't buy a primary residence, second home, home for a disqualified party, or an office building to be used by a disqualified party. So that last one comes up all the time. People want to go out and buy a building or pay off a building they already have, or their business is occupying. We cannot have you do that. The only way you're going to do that is to create the rollover business startup, which, if you were paying attention, you heard me talk about C corporations. I'm not ever a fan of people owning real estate with a corporation, okay? If we're looking at 1031s, the biggest issue with any 1031 is time. The second biggest issue is vesting, and that just means that the person that gives us something has to be given something back. If you own a property in an S or C corp, and it's got multiple shareholders, inevitably people want to go different directions. Or maybe you've closed the business and it's still owned by the corporation. Just taking the asset from the corporation is going to trigger taxes, and those taxes are going to wipe out any benefit of a future exchange. Well, Biden's Build Back Better, one of the other things that we were really watching with great interest on was they wanted to treat LLCs the same as corporations. They would go mark to market on distributions from an LLC. So anybody on this call that deals with commercial properties, investment properties, even some investment properties. If you live, for example, Oregon's not a community property state, so spouses that own real estate in an LLC, if they give up the property in an LLC, they have to buy in an LLC. And if it's 4 units or less, most of those loans are residential loans. The cost of money is going to be a lot more if it's something to an LLC. So inevitably, what happens is we structure the LLC we structure the 1031 in the LLC's name for the spouses, and then they go to get the financing on the buy side. The lender says, hey, we can get a lot cheaper money if you just buy it personally, and then we have to tell them they can't do that. So that's how easy vesting is to be a problem. But with like I said, with Biden's Build Back Better, they wanted to throw LLCs, so we would break. To get around that, we'd break the entity predisposition, and then they go forward and do what they want to do. And that break, the drop and swap or swap and drop, would have been a thing in the past, because that drop would have triggered the tax consequences, same as an S or C corp. So fortunately, that thing did not happen. So when we're looking at office buildings to be used by a disqualified party, a lot of times people want to buy those buildings, and I mean, ultimately that would be a great investment, right? You have control, very low risk, everything else, but you can't use it. You can't use your retirement account to buy that building, because now you've got a lease between your business and that retirement account, and that would constitute a prohibited transaction. So that's why we can't do that. So how do we create these things? I mean, any of these types of plans, we're going to be able to roll over. Obviously, if it's a current employer plan, we've got to be careful. If you're under 59.5, we can't do anything with it. At 59.5, you can take it in service distribution. Previous employer plans, we can actually roll over. Any IRA can be self-directed. I want to say that again. Any IRA can become a self-directed IRA. There I go. I just got ahead of myself. Usually I have those slides reversed. So how do we do it? We're just going to move money from custodian A to custodian B. Move from a custodian that won't allow you to do what you want to one that does. If you're working with us, you're going to fill out a 2-page application. You're going to return that to us along with a copy of a photo ID, your current account's most recent statement. Our people are going to take that information, fill out a variety of forms, get them back to you. Those forms we're going to need original signatures on. They're going to be bright lined, highlighted where we need additional information and or signatures. You're going to get those forms back, the originals back to us. We're going to create the custodial accounts. And as that's happening, if we're doing a checkbook IRA, we are going to be creating that IRA specific limited liability company too. But if it's a basic self-directed IRA, we're literally done at that point. We're just moving from money. And I want to stress again, it's not all or nothing. So keep your Wall Street stuff with your financial advisor. Just move what you want to use in the self-directed world through this. And if it's a basic account, we're just moving money from custodian A to custodian B. We're going to establish the custodial account. Then to make an investment, you submit the investment to the custodian. Upon their approval, they'll make the investment. If we're wanting to do a checkbook IRA, which is what, if you're buying real estate, I'm going to say that's what you're going to want. This is what a checkbook IRA looks like. So we're going to take whatever source of funds is. We're going to create the appropriate custodial accounts. If you've got a traditional IRA money and Roth IRA money, we're going to have to create a custodial account for each of those. And then when we do the IRA LLC, we're going to have them either, that could be a single member LLC, it could be multi-member, that IRA LLC. So the investment the trust company makes is not into the ultimate investment. The investment the trust company makes is into the checkbook IRA LLC that you are the manager of. So that checkbook IRA LLC could contain your IRA's money. It could contain maybe traditional and Roth money. It could contain your traditional Roth money, your spouse's traditional and Roth money. It could contain all of your different respective IRA accounts and personal money too. I mean, all those things are possible. If it's a single member LLC or multi-member with non-disqualified parties as its members, we can have additional money go in and out of that entity. If we create a multi-member checkbook IRA LLC and the membership of that checkbook IRA LLC contains disqualified parties. So remember earlier I talked about it's a prohibited transaction to transact between it for the benefit of disqualified parties, not a prohibited transaction to transact along with. So you're going to get into this thing, and that's going to be fine. We want you to overfund that LLC's the initial investment, because if we have multiple members that are disqualified parties, we can't add additional money later. All right, so it's important to keep things going, and just once again, plan ahead. Make sure you're doing what you can. Give us a call. Talk about your objectives. We're going to talk you through all this process and help you get where you need to be. All right. But checkbook IRA, if you want to look at it in the most basic sense, all we're doing is creating an IRA-specific limited liability company that's inserted between the trust company and your ultimate investment. The reason you want it is, imagine this: you go out and buy a piece of property. If it's a basic account, how do you write the offer? I told you earlier you couldn't write it personally and then assign it over to the trust company, which is ultimately what's going on. And you're going to have their approval of the investment before they're going to make the investment. And where do you get the earnest money? So it's really critical. With a checkbook IRA, you're literally initiating the investment between the seller and the checkbook IRA LLC. You as manager, they need a check for earnest money, you write them a check. So it's a simple thing. But with that entity, you're going to do whatever you want. The only interaction you have with the trust company annually is to provide them a valuation of all cash and assets the LLC has, because they have absolutely no way of knowing. So every year you're going to submit a form that's going to tell them exactly what you've got. And if you get to the point where you're 72 now, once again, I said 72, not 70 and a half. So the RMDs kick in at 72 years old. At that point, they're going to help you crank out the RMD calculations. RMD's required minimum distribution. If you are self-employed without employees, I'm going to say let's forget the IRA, and that's assuming that the source of money is not an inherited IRA, which is a beneficiary IRA, or Roth IRA money. So I love 401k plans over the IRAs, because if our plans are going to allow you to do inside them Roth conversions, but you've got the ability to make leveraged investments without being taxed on the leverage. You've got the ability to, if you did commit a prohibited transaction, you wouldn't convert the entire account, which is huge. And you don't have a custodian. You've got less cost here going forward. If we look at a checkbook IRA, you've got ongoing costs. You've got custodial fees. You've got state registration fees for the LLC. If you're working with us and the custodians we work with, you're going to have annual review fees there, but you typically might be looking at $500 to $700 a year to keep a checkbook IRA LLC going. If we're talking about a solo 401k, you're really looking about $300 a year, because it's just the amendments or restatements of the plan that have to be taken care of. And the only reporting you've got for a 401k plan, if you've got under $250,000 and there's no reporting, if there's more than $250,000, then you've got a Form 5500 EZ, which a lot of our clients do themselves, or they have their CPA do. But I just love 401k plans for a variety of reasons. Like I said, no UBIT on leverage, which is great. That prohibited transaction, that benefit of that, increased contributions. I mean, you've got contribution levels. SEP IRAs are pretty darn good too, but up in the high $50,000 range, which is wonderful. IRAs you can't borrow from. 401k plans you can. Half of what's in the plan to a max of $50,000. It's really wide open. The only restriction on investment is, like I said earlier, collectibles. And you literally are going to have a bank account in the plan's name and federal tax ID number. You're the trustee of that plan. The money's in that account, and it works just like a checkbook IRA. If you want or need to have a limited liability company, you can add a limited liability company to your 401k plan, and then you literally have the same thing you would with a checkbook IRA, but you've got more flexibility. The downside is that the biggest downside is you can't have employees. If you have employees, you can't discriminate against your employees with respect to their right to invest in whatever you want. So you're going to have, as soon as you get employees involved, you've got to have a third-party administrator or TPA, and you're going to have somebody that's going to allow you and your client, your employees to go invest in things, and that starts getting expensive, let's say. And in today's world, it's still perceived that you would have more liability if you allow your employees to go out and invest in whatever they want versus just keeping them sort of locked into the Wall Street world. We talked about this slide. I'm not going to talk about anymore. Prohibited transactions typically occur because of these things. Mortgages, it's got to be non-recourse debt. And I see where, you know, I was talking about this earlier with my staff. I'm the eternal optimist. I think I can get through more information than I can. You guys are doing a good job. I can see we still got a lot of people on here. I'm running over. We've probably got another 10 minutes till I'm done. I tried to trim it down to an hour this morning. It didn't happen. I'll try to be better, but you know, if you have to go, I understand. Also be aware that this thing will be up. You can watch it later. So if you need to go, it will be preserved, archived, and you'll be able to check it out. So we're going to go through a couple more slides, go through some examples, and we're wrapped up. So when shopping for a loan, it's got to be non-recourse. So if you're looking and you want to sort of see what one of these things looks like, type in myiralender.com or iralending.com. There's a couple sources. North American Savings Bank is a bank that specializes in these things. I think they'll do up to, you know, the mid-20s in doors, and what I mean by that is apartments. They'll do up to that much. They'll actually do cash out refis on things too, which is really impressive when we're talking about retirement accounts. But you know, think lower loan to value. Typically, the money's going to be a little bit more expensive, and it's going to be a lower loan to value, maybe 60-65% loan to value at most. They want to see somebody who's got some experience in real estate, if we're talking about real estate. Too, because they don't want somebody getting in this stuff for the first time and having some problems. I'm going to say, you know, especially if we're talking about IRAs, if we're talking about a multi-member checkbook IRA with disqualified parties members, we want to overfund the IRA and initially, because we want to make sure we've got enough to make the initial investment, cover any carrying costs until there's enough cash flow off the asset that's built up in there to cover any potential problems. So they want to see some reserves. They might want to see 15% reserves to make an investment for you. And then you just have to be prepared and working with a CPA that understands how to calculate the tax on the leverage. And then we're talking about not only the income that's attributable to other people's money, but upon disposition also. So, you know, there used to be a guy that would say, well, gee, you know, IRAs are a great option in lieu of 1031. And they're apples and oranges. I mean, you just can't say they're better or worse. Two totally different things. And in fact, there are times when IRAs have to do 1031s. If you've got a leveraged investment with an IRA, and you sell that thing, even with a Roth IRA, you're going to have tax on the gain attributable to the leverage. So why not do a 1031 with your IRA? So that's just one of those things that comes up people don't really think about. So leveraged investments with an IRA, fine. If you've got more questions on this topic, reach out or take a look at, like I said, myiralender.com or iralending.com. Talked about this, negotiate from deal's inception between the seller and the IRA. If it's a basic account, it's going to be cumbersome. If it's a checkbook IRA, it's pretty easy. Solo 401k, you're just negotiating between the seller and the 401k plan directly, or if we've had an LLC for you, you're going to have the LLC doing it. But as I said before, this is not you. It's Sally down the street, nothing that's going on. They want to see your financials. You have nothing to do with it, period. Nothing. They have no recourse on you. The insurance policies on the property are not on your homeowner's policy. It's a new policy in the plan's name or the IRLC's name. These things are not yours, period. If there's tax exposure on leverage, that UBIT stuff, it's not your tax liability, it's the retirement account's tax liability. So it's important, once again, that you've got tax people that understand this stuff. But you know, buying the property, you've got to have it set. Get it right. If you're a broker and somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to use my IRA to go buy this property, your first question is going to be, is the account established? Because if not, as I said earlier, it's going to take probably 4 to 6 weeks to put it together. You're not going to be a happy person writing that offer, especially in today's market when things are just going away overnight, right? So your first question is going to be, is the account ready to go? Your second question is going to be what type of account it is. If it's a basic self-directed IRA, you're not going to be a happy camper once again, because everything's got to be run through the trust company, and you're going to want to have a contingency in that purchase sale agreement stating that this purchase is subject to the trust company's approval. Now, if it's and you know, it takes time, have some time there. But if it's checkbook IRA, you don't have to put that stuff in there. So time is going to be the deal. make sure if you're the investor that you're ready to make the investments and when it's necessary, if you're ready to have that money go where it needs to when it's necessary. If you're a broker working in that space and your investors using that money, make sure that they're ready to go so you're not sitting there losing deals because it's happening. So contingencies, as I said, you want to, if it's a basic account, you need the custodian's approval. If it's a checkbook, IRA, or 401k, and if you're leveraging it, you need to state, even though your state forms typically have a financial contingency in them, you want to make sure it's IRA or 401k specific. Non-recourse stuff, so you'd want to make sure you put in contingency in there subject to, buyer's ability to get a non-recourse IRA, 401k specific loan, and then make sure you ask for whatever time you feel you need to get the deal done. Other than that, it's pretty simple. This is just about, having enough to make the purchase and cover carrying costs until you've got enough cash flow to make things happen, but don't spend it all in acquisition and have to cover money, because your ability to cover costs beyond what's in your account is dictated upon your ability to make contributions to that account. And as I said, if it's a single member checkbook IRA, you can always make a contribution and then the money goes in and it goes where it needs to be. If it's a multi-member LLC with disqualified parties, now you can't make the contribution, so now you're stuck. So make sure you're always be conservative, and my experience is people are conservative in this space. They're going to hang on to stuff. And by the way, selling, same thing's going to happen. If you're the broker, you're just going to be listing the property. The listing agreement's going to be between you and the IRA LLC or you and the 401k plan. As the property sells, the proceeds are just going to go from that escrow back into the 401k plan or back into the LLC's checking account. It is not that person's money. It's the retirement account that owns the asset. It's a retirement account that's going to enjoy the benefit of that investment. And at the only time that the investor, the taxpayer, is going to be receiving the benefit is upon distribution of those assets. So here's a few examples. We're done. First example, diversification. Okay, they just want to go do something else. So, if we look at the transaction always comes to mind. In this frame, I didn't put a lot of detail on it, but it was meant to open the door. A lot of times people sort of dip their toe in the water. And a very good friend, a longtime friend and business acquaintance, and fellow Rotarian, actually, when we were putting the IRA business together, he's going, you got to do this. I think it would be great. I don't know anything about this. You're telling me this thing can be done. I want to do this. So, Terry, if you're listening to this thing or watching it, this slide's sort of you, and dipping your toe in the water, right? So what he did is he had a buddy that had some dirt at the beach, and he was having some problems with it, and he wanted to help his buddy out. So once again, make a difference, community-based investment. So he saw an opportunity to buy some land at the beach. It would further diversify his retirement account, and then furthermore, he had the ability to help his friend. So his first investment was just simply moving enough money to make that investment in the dirt to help his friend. And that worked so well that he started asking, and he's doing our radio ads, and he still does our radio ads all these years later. And he's like, well, what else is going on? What are people doing? We're talking about different transactions, writing the ads. And he finds out one of the investment firms we do a lot of work with is putting tenancy and common investments together, ends up buying into a Boise apartment complex. And this is probably a decade ago now. So it wasn't the current onslaught there, but it was always a good one. And he ended up making a tremendous investment there. So what was unique about that apartment complex, I'll never forget, is it was tied in with the BYU up there, and so I guess the student housing projects, they'll withhold a kid's diploma if the kid's not current on rent, and so it was really a great opportunity because they didn't have to worry about people defaulting. They had some leverage to make things happen, and it just the investment worked out great for him, and he's done a lot with us since. But once again, getting started with a little and then moving more into the transaction over time as you're comfortable with it. This gentleman that came in, and this is, you've got to look at, once again, the question of, if you look at it straight up, can you do it? Maybe, maybe not. But if we take the time to plan things out, figure out ultimate objectives, strategize a little bit, we can make it happen. So this gentleman is a builder developer, saw the ability to land bank with money. If you attend these presentations, I use this slide a lot because I like it. There's another slide that we're going to get to that I like. But in a nutshell, what we did is we did a checkbook IRA for him for a land bank. He went and bought a bunch of dirt, didn't know when he was going to be able to build on it. But when he did build on it, we couldn't just have his company do it because that would be a prohibited transaction. So we created a second limited liability company that was the development entity, and his ownership in that entity was reduced to 1/6 interest. So at 1/6 interest, that entity was not a disqualified party to his retirement account. So as they wanted to build out those lots, we would, the ownership would flow from the holding entity to the development entity, they build it out, and then you just keep snowballing, keep rolling the land bank entity as you want to do. So once again, invest in what you know, community-based stuff. It was a great thing for him, and it's worked very well through the years. What do you want to buy? So this guy has a lot of real estate. Another gentleman sort of dipped his toe in the water first. This is another deal that was, those who don't study history are condemned to relive it, right? So we look at the market right now, you look at what's going on, it's pretty frothy. If there's an adjustment in it, what I say on one of those early frames, I said the secret to success in real estate is, thanks to the old 1031 guru, is not to have to sell in a recession, right? So real estate's not a get rich quick scheme, it's a get rich surely and slowly scheme. So in this situation, the people that had to sell. He ended up, this gentleman had a bunch of property, but he wanted to diversify out of his retirement account, wanted to buy some real estate. Initially, he engaged us talking about buying a mobile home park, and then he decided he was tired of the terrible teas, toilets, trash, tenants, turnover, and he called up talking about notes. So he ended up, the first note he bought was just a first, paying 11% on a property that's selling for 70 in the Palm Desert that had been 200 plus pre-crash, and that was a wonderful deal. And in his position, he was like, look, at 50%, I could own this thing if that person defaults for $35,000. How does that hurt me? Period. So my position on notes is never anything but a first, and never for more than you'd be happy owning the asset for. Now, this gentleman started off with a $35,000 investment. Over the coming years, over probably the next decade working with him, he moved several $1 million through us. And I think the biggest note he bought was, I think, seemed like it was $950,000 or so as a wind power plant. And that thing was actually paying him 19%. And that was one, it was like a 10% loan to value. He was just, he was hoping they were going to default, but it worked. All that stuff worked very well. Just further diversified from Wall Street, kept things going where he wanted to go, got him where he wanted to be. Invest in what you know. Make a difference locally. Take advantage of opportunities that you're aware of. This is a situation where we had a young couple come to us and said, look, they heard one of our ads and said, hey, we live in this neighborhood, it's being developed, we see an opportunity, there's this lot that's right adjacent to our house, it's really inexpensive, and we just think it'd be a great opportunity to acquire this thing. Now, can they do that? And the answer is yes. Now, the caution is, if you look through the case law, and I said earlier that there's very little case law on this, can they buy that lot with their retirement account? The answer is yes. Can they use that lot? The answer is no. So you would not want to have a fence around that is enclosing your property and that property and making it one. That would not be good. One of the court cases in the self-directed world that is cited is a guy that had a business, and they bought the adjacent property to his business, and he was parking all the trucks on that property. That's a prohibited transaction. It blew up on him. So you got to be careful. Once again, is the investment okay? Yes. What is happening with the investment? Is there a benefit to a disqualified party? If so, there's a potential problem there. So In this case, this is an example of they didn't have enough money to do it on their own, so they put his retirement into it, her retirement account into it, and then they put personal money into it too. And then actually we ended up using a note funding the checkbook IRA LLC because all the money that was needed to make the thing happen wasn't available at the actual creation of the LLC. So a note was going to have that money was all going to be available within a very short period of time after the initial establishment. And that note allowed that money to get in there without, making a prohibited transaction occur. So this is just an example of combining multiple accounts, disqualified parties, making an investment, getting people where they want to go, and making a difference locally. Final example is one I use in my 1031 transaction presentations too. I just love this thing. Sorry if you've heard it before, but husband and wife come to us retired. They're needing some more money, wanting a place to live. So they first engage us telling us they want to buy a mobile home RV park using his and her IRAs. And our answer to that was, yeah, sure, we can help you with that. We'll do a checkbook IRA. Then they mentioned they wanted to live there, be the on-site managers, both of which are problems. So we ended up shifting gears and we went and did a rollover business startup. So with a rollover business startup, we created the 401k plan, the C Corp plan bought the Corp bought the park. Now they're employed by a corporation that has the park, and they got a job, a place to live, and an investment, all with this one investment. So it just shows, it's an extreme example of what's possible with time and planning. So last slide, plan ahead, takes 2 to 4 weeks to put it together. I'm gonna say 4 to 6, purchase all types of property with it. IRA, SEP IRA, Roth IRA, you can purchase with family members or friends, cannot purchase from or for them. Your IRA cannot sell to you or any other disqualified party. You can use an IRA to buy property with mortgage, negotiate from the deal's inception, the IRA or IRA LLC's name. Don't overextend. Plan on keeping a nice cushion of reserves. Real estate is not an alternative investment, it's a real investment. I just want to stress all this information is out there. This presentation is going to be on our YouTube channel. Take a look at those things. If you got questions or concerns anytime, don't hesitate to reach out. The only dumb question is the one you don't ask. David Moore with Equity Advantage. Happy to have you here today. If you need something, reach out to C Moore at IRAadvantage.net, CMOORE at IRAadvantage.net, and she'll be able to take care of you. The questions, once again, I apologize, I wasn't able to address them. I will get back to you with the answers to those. And once again, thank you very much for your time, and look forward to talking with you soon. David Moore, IRA Advantage. Take care. All my best. Bye-bye.